My friends, look at this. I was shocked when I saw this. This is December 27th, 2015. It's, oh, listen. It says, Pope speaking, we know what Jesus did on that occasion. Instead of returning home with his family, Jesus stayed in Jerusalem in the temple, causing great distress to Mary and Joseph, who were unable to find him. For this little escapade, the Pope said, Jesus probably had to beg forgiveness of his parents. If you are begging forgiveness, what does that imply? For this little escapade, Jesus probably had to beg forgiveness of his parents. Watch this. The gospel doesn't say this, but I believe that we can presume it. What is he doing here, friends? He's adding to God's word. Friends, can we see what's going on? In Luke chapter 2, did Christ have to beg forgiveness of Mary? What is the Pope setting up here? That the world must turn and ask forgiveness from whom? Let me leave that for the future. Do you see how deceptive he is, friends? But true knowledge keep us from the strange woman. So those who don't want to hear this will follow the ways of that strange woman, and that way leads to where? Death. But in Luke chapter 2, verse 40, verse 41, when Mary asked Christ, where were you? What did Christ say? No, it's not. Why were you looking for me? I was where my Father said I should be. Then Christ says what? No, you not. I must be about my Father's business. So was Christ doing his Father's business a sin? What is he now saying, friends?
Hey everybody, this is Mike with On Point Preparedness. We've got a couple news stories that I want to share with you very quickly about the false prophet Pope Francis and some of his most recent speeches. And this is all about his speech that he made to Kenya's youth at the end of November. And it's going to be in line with his statements where he said Jesus failed at the cross, but this time he's saying that God is destroyed and God is a failure. Pretty crazy stuff. So to start off with, this is a very vast and widespread speech to the Kenyan youth. Again, this is almost a theme on my channel. I've mentioned it several times that the Pope is always targeting the youth, as well as all the political leaders around the world. Remember what Ronald Reagan said about freedom is only a generation away from extinction? Well, that's exactly what they're doing, is targeting all the young people because they are very malleable to their intentions. But in this speech, he talked to the youth saying that, there's a lot of tribal warfare and death and destruction in certain areas of Africa and how to overcome it. He makes some very typical socialist and New World Order comments like this one, saying there are some small opportunities for the Kenyan youth, but really it's a social danger which is beyond us and even beyond this country because it depends on an international system that is unjust. So again, just more New World Order type language there. But here's the kicker. Here's the big one. A reporter, Manuel, asked this question about how can you find God in all this tragedy? Specifically speaking about all the violence that's happening in various parts of Africa. And so here's the Pope's response. Let's see. How can I see the hand of God in tragedy? I was going to say there's just one response, but no, there's no response. There is a path. To look at the Son of God. God endured death to save all of us. God became a tragedy. God allowed himself to be destroyed on the cross. When you don't understand something, when desperation hits you, then look at the cross. That is the great failure of God. That is the destruction of God, and it's a challenge to our faith. Just unbelievable things that he's saying here because, his last statement where he said Jesus failed at the cross, many Catholics, try to defend him saying, well, humanely speaking, not spiritually speaking. In this one, he's really saying that Jesus dying on the cross and God dying on the cross, that is a failure. And later he goes on to say that, well, that failure's okay because it was renewed with the resurrection. So it was a failure that was patched over. But we all know that God is perfection and there is absolutely no failure. So again, more heretical statements. He said Jesus failed at the cross. He said that God is the great failure. And he's very cunning in how he phrases these things. Some other things here. Pope Francis welcomes in the new year with a call to end arrogance of the powerful. But here's again, just very subtle twisting of words where he's welcoming in the new year. He said, let ourselves be reborn. Key word, reborn, to overcome the indifference which blocks solidarity, key word coming out of France, and to leave behind the false neutrality which prevents sharing. And again, he's talking about a common world and a just and fraternal world, a world in which every person and every creature can dwell in peace. So we all know what it means to be a born-again Christian. It's all about being saved by Christ. But he's talking about it from a very secular perspective, a very worldly perspective, talking about being in solidarity with one another, sharing with one another in our common home, our fraternal world, and dwelling in peace and safety. So again, he just twists things. They all sound very nice, but just twist things for that one world order agenda.
Walking into Sultan Ahmet Mosque, Pope Francis did as millions of visitors before him have done. He paused to take in one of the greatest masterpieces of Ottoman architecture. Guided through the mosque by Istanbul's Grand Mufti, this was the Pope concentrating more on religious affairs on the second day of his visit to Turkey. Both men stopped to pray towards Mecca.
The Book of Revelation uses symbols to explain prophecy. The symbolic use of Babylon depicts the Vatican in Rome, which has disseminated her pagan doctrines with a Christian veneer. Apostle Peter even described Rome as the new Babylon. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 13, "The church that is at Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, and so doth Marcus my son." Ancient Babylon was a polytheistic religion including the worship of a sun god. When the Western Roman Empire came to its end, the papacy would take its place and the Pope would arise. Roman Catholicism is simply a mixture of Christianity and paganism. The same polytheistic religion of Babylon exists today within the walls of every Catholic church. The veneration of saints, which simply replaced the many Babylonian gods. Babylonian Semiramis, who became Mary, and the worship of a sun god are all inventions of ancient Babylon.